All right, we're chipping away on the XS400 build, and now it is time to do the turn signals on this thing. So for this, I wanted a very clean setup, and I wanted to try something a little bit new. So what I sourced was a set of signals from Purpose Built Moto in Australia. These things are very clean. They're very well made. They're actually an in-house design. And if you haven't heard of Purpose Built Moto, you're living under a rock, to be honest. But in short, they're an LED dual filament, so they have 3 wires, and they have a stud that is built into them here, and they include a little spacer and then a washer and a nylon lock nut. So they're sold as a pair. They're gonna be very bright, and we're actually gonna be using these front and back on the bike, but out in the rear, these are gonna be our only lighting that we have. So the way I'm gonna be wiring these in the future is actually going to be a run-turn brake, which we'll talk more about as we go. But in this video, we're gonna be focusing on how to make a clean mount system for the rear and the front. So let's jump into that now, and we're gonna start off on the lathe with making a couple inserts for the frame on which the turn signals mount. Now with the steel inserts being complete, it's time to mount these things on the bike, but to do that we need to punch a couple holes in the frame, and I want to make sure that I get it right the first time. So to do that, I'm relying on a laser level to give me a visual guide on my drill marks, as well as giving me a visual guide with the drill itself as I'm working. So overall this worked really well and allowed me to get these things placed exactly where I wanted.
One eternity later.
There it is. So I'm just doing a very small pilot hole, and then once I get a larger drill, I can kind of like start to rotate it without fear of breaking the bit. So if it's not like 100% perfect, which I mean that's really close, but I think it's ever so slightly kicked to the inside. I can use the bigger drill to kind of just straighten it back out, and once I have it straight, then I'll put my final size in there, and it will be square and perfect and stuff. Time to do that one. So I can tell I'm slightly off level. I think this hole started out a little higher than this one, but I believe we're square that way, and I should be able to make the right adjustments here. And that's a weird angle. So now I can see the plug that I put in here is actually solid. I don't know if it's another section of tubing or not. go. That's how we're going to keep them. Now the piece of angle iron in there, I realize, is not actually perfectly level. So I think we're square enough. Beautiful. I want a wireless foot pedal so bad. And so I'm also planning on blending this mainly on this side, just because there's not a bunch of clearance right here. All right, what do you say we go ahead and test fit our signal? How about you? I think that looks super clean. See how tight our tolerances are back there? So once I finish welding that backside, I will have to probably file that down. We might get away with not having to file anything up front. We'll probably blend it just to make it smooth. So with the seat and fender back on, this just kind of disappears, which is really nice. So the frame is likely going to be black, and then these being that kind of raw aluminum color, or at least anodized silver aluminum. That'll draw your attention, so you won't notice much in there. I could always put like a little piece of heat shrink. Once you get this tightened up, I could put heat shrink over that to kind of just make it disappear into the void. Super happy with that though. Very subtle turn signals, but I know these things are super bright. And they're really no thicker than the width of the tubing there. So they're not even tightened, so I can get them dialed in how I need. I just like that very thin rear profile there. And then now I'm actually kind of thinking about building, I don't know, maybe a tiny little mesh rack or something like that. I want to add some kind of something to this bike, whether it be like luggage carrying, so like maybe I'll put like a cool little bag here, or maybe I'll utilize these studs and that mounting location to put, I don't know, maybe some kind of cool little wire rack just to, I don't know, put something on. It'd be neat. Anyway, I'm loving how this thing's turning out. Big step forward. All right, on to the front turn signals. So you can see this one I already have mounted. So we're using the same exact units from Purpose Built Moto. So we have a standard pair of them, but to mount them, I'm keeping this actually really simple and really cheap. So in here, I've got our necessary brackets. These came from good old Amazon. Scoured the internet looking for something that was like 33 millimeter like these forks. And this is what I came up with. So this, I guess it's just designed to mount a turn signal to or something. But this is just made of steel. It has a hinge in it so you can put it on the fork without taking the triples off. Comes with a couple screws. This side is countersunk and it's threaded with like a little M5. So I do have to modify these a little bit. If you had like a 32 millimeter fork or something like that, this specific one would work well. But I do have to put these in the lathe a little bit to open them up because it's a little too tight. So we'll go ahead and chuck these things up. Once we get it to where it can close onto the fork, then I will open up this hole a little bit and then we can just put the turn signal on and be done. All right, I'm gonna chuck this thing up in the lathe. Now I want it to spin this way instead of this way to where it could potentially catch a little bit more of an edge. So throw it in here like this. I'm gonna try to keep this pretty similar to how I had the last one because it took a few tries to get it to run like really straight. That's a little bit better. All right, one more pass. All right, guys, as I was working on the lathe right then, I had a minute to reflect on something I said earlier, saying this is going to be easy and it will be simple. And you know what? Of course, it's more simple for me because I have a lathe, and I know not everybody does, and I'm very fortunate to have that thing, but you know, I do feel bad for saying something like that. It just made me think of a meme that was like, YouTubers be like, step one, fire up your $3.5 million Haas CNC or something like that. And you know, I don't want to be that guy. So I didn't have a lathe up until just recently. And again, I'm very fortunate to have that thing. But you can still accomplish this same task. It's just going to take you a little bit longer by using something like a flap disc on your drill. And it's pretty obvious what you do here. You're just working that thing. It's going to accomplish the same goal. It's just going to take a little bit longer. So you get that simplicity back. So anyway, back on track here. We'll throw this thing on the bike and go ahead and get our hole drilled so we can actually put our turn signal in. Now, because this hole is not big enough to fit the actual turn signal through, we're going to open this thing up. So first I'm starting out with a 1/4 inch, which is guided by this outer portion. And then that's going to allow us to step it up to the size we need. But this will just be our pilot hole, so to speak. And then stepping it up to a 5/16. There you go.